what did we learn from minicamp? So one person stood out to me the most. Now, there was a lot of different aspects, but the person that stood out to me the most, it was Nick Herbig. I think he looked like a monster out there. He looked like somebody that's going to command more snaps on Sunday. Now, the first thing that you're going to say is, come on, Big B, what are you talking about? What is he going to take TJ Watt off the field? Is he going to take Alex Highsmith off the field? I'm not necessarily saying that, but what I am saying, I think he's going to command more snaps, and they're going to find ways to get him on the field with those guys in nickel packages and dime packages and all these pass rushing situations. You can never have enough pass rushers on the field. You could slide TJ Watt inside to a 3 technique and let him rush from there and get Nick Herbig or vice versa or whatever you need to do. I just think Nick Herbig, he looked big, he looked strong, he looked aggressive. He just looked like somebody that is going to command more snaps. And that's all good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because look, TJ Watt's been hurt. He's gotten hurt. And I shouldn't say the less snaps that he gets, but the more opportunities that he can be fresh out there. And when I say fresh, if you can sub him out and you bring in a guy like Nick Herbig and he can still be productive, there's going to be a drop-off. Let's not kid ourselves on who TJ Watt is. But if you can sub him in and Nick Herbig can still be a productive football player, that's what he looks like. He looks like he is just dove headfirst into the offseason and just said, hey, look, I know who I'm playing behind, but also know who I play for, and I'm going out here to make some football plays whenever I get my opportunity. That's all good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think a lot of fans, a lot of people out there have high expectations for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense this season, and Nick Herbig is going to be a part of that. How big, we don't know, but I definitely think he's going to have a much bigger role than what he had last year. Next person up, as far as who impressed, Calvin Austin III, people. Look, I don't think there's any question that if the season were to start today, Calvin Austin III would be that second wide receiver. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean that the Steelers aren't going to still try to go out there and acquire a number 2 receiver. Doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that the Steelers brass probably doesn't want for Roman Wilson to be that number 2 receiver. But as of right now, it would be Calvin Austin III. And by the looks at minicamp, OTAs, he's kind of earned it. He's out there making plays. He's making plays against number 1 wide or defensive backs. He's getting open. He looks fresh. Now, I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again. OTAs and minicamp are in shorts, people. No pads. Pads make a difference, okay? When you put those things on and there's live action coming at you, that matters. But as of now, and the way that he looks, it looks like he has taken that next step to be wide receiver number 2 for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. There's a lot of different things that he did last year. Look, it could have been some of the offense. You know, we love that Matt Canada offense, didn't we? So some of it could have been that. He didn't have a lot of plays going over the middle. Everything was outside or on a jet sweep. It's almost like when he came into the game, you knew something of that nature was coming. And I just think there's going to be a lot more imagination that is involved with Calvin Austin III. Again, is he the greatest number 2 receiver that we've seen? Probably not. Is there a lot to be desired when the pads come on? Maybe. But as of right now, he's playing good football. And again, if the season were to start today, Calvin Austin III would be your Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver number 2. And I think he's kind of earned that at this point. So again, that doesn't mean that they're not going to go out there and try to get another receiver. It doesn't mean that at all. And we'll get into a little bit of that later. But I like what I see out of Calvin Austin III right now. Lastly is George Pickens. He looks like an absolute superstar. It looks like he has taken the offseason and said, you know what? It's time for me to turn this up a notch. He was already pretty damn good. It looks like that George Pickens has just said, you know what? I'm going to be one of the best receivers in the National Football League. They're talking about this person. They talk about that person. Now that maybe I don't have the restraints of being in such a pathetic offense, an offensive scheme, now those restraints are going to be lifted, and I'm going to be ready to roll. It looks like George Pickens is taking it seriously. Clearly, he is the most dominant receiver on the football field. He's just taking it to the defense when his number has been called. I like what George Pickens brings to the table. It's time for him to be a star. I do have a question for you guys. Again, one of those great poll questions. Do you think that George Pickens makes the jump to superstardom this season? Do you think that this is the year that George Pickens makes the jump to superstardom? Make sure you leave your answers in the comments. Personally, yeah, I think the answer is yes. Just the way that he looks, the way that he's taking this seriously. Look, we all know that the star power is there. He had some route running issues that we talked about before, that seemed to be more scheme related, because later on in the season, when there was a little bit more of imagination on offense, he seemed to be running different routes, which is a good, it lets me know that he's been working on running the route tree. OTAs and minicamp, he showed that he's really been working on it, doing a lot of different things out on the football field. So I just believe that George Pickens is ready to actually explode. It's never been a matter of the talent. It's always been the maturity. And it seems like, again, not in pads, not during the season, but it seems like the maturity has raised to the level of his ability. And if that's the case, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers may have found their next superstar wide receiver.